One of the most influential artists that America has ever produced, and who emblazoned himself indelibly on the pages of art history. A person whose images changed the art world forever. One of the superstars of 20th century art. One of the most significant and influential artists of his generation. He's known as the connoisseur of the comic strip, a master of irony, a prophet of popular culture, pop art's king of cool. It is said that talent borrows and genius steals, and the accusation of plagiarism still dogs the legacy of today's history maker, Roy Lichtenstein. Born and raised in Manhattan some 100 years ago in 1923, Roy Fox Lichtenstein grew up on the Upper West Side of New York, the son of a well-off New York real estate broker, a shy but quietly determined character. He attended Dwight School, the same private school as Truman Capote, and graduated in 1940. Lichtenstein first became interested in art and design as a hobby through school. An avid jazz fan, often attending concerts at the Apollo Theatre in Harlem, he would often draw portraits of the musicians playing their instruments. Lichtenstein then left New York to study at Ohio State University, which offered studio courses and a degree in fine arts. His studies were interrupted by a 3-year stint having to fight in the Second World War, but as a soldier rather than flying planes like the jet pilot heroes he'd later portray. After the war, he returned to his studies in Ohio and entered the graduate program at Ohio State and was hired as an art instructor, a post he held on and off for the next 10 years. In 1949, Lichtenstein received a Master of Fine Arts degree from Ohio State University. At the start of his career, his work fluctuated between Cubism and Expressionism. However, in 1957, he moved back to upstate New York and began teaching again. It was at this time that he adopted the abstract expressionism style, being a late convert to this style of painting, but he began to incorporate hidden images of cartoon characters such as Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny into his abstract works. In 1960, he started teaching at Rutgers University, an environment that helped reignite his interest in proto-pop imagery. In 1961, Lichtenstein began his first pop paintings using cartoon images and techniques derived from the appearance of commercial printing. Also, in 1961, Leo Castelli started displaying Lichtenstein's works at his well-known gallery in New York. Lichtenstein had his first one-man show at the Castelli Gallery in 1962. The entire collection was bought by influential collectors before the show even opened. This phase would continue to 1965, and alongside pop art giants Andy Warhol and Jasper Johns included the use of advertising imagery suggesting consumerism and homemaking. Lichtenstein's breakthrough moment came about largely thanks to a cartoon mouse. It's the 1960s. Lichtenstein is pushing 40 and yet to make it. One day, so the story goes, his young son challenges him to draw something as good as a cartoon. The painting source would be a page from a Walt Disney comic book from 1960. He had dabbled with cartoon characters before, but only in an expressionistic way. And then in 1961, he comes up with an extraordinary idea. He decided to paint cartoon characters simply as they appeared, but blown up to huge proportions. With his curious oil painting of an oversized Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse, Roy was onto something. He would later say, quote, "I put it up in my studio and I couldn't do any other kind of painting. Everything I did just looked like mush or something. It was just that this thing kept looking at me." The painting is called Look, Mickey would fire the starting gun on a seriously successful career. Lichtenstein's appropriation of the printer Ben Day's dot patterns, a technique for creating printed images by using dots to create gradations of shading, his heavy black outlines and bright, flat colour schemes are instantly eye-catching. Adopting the language of mechanical reproduction, he painstakingly rendered each of the dots that upon close inspection can be seen to make up a printed image. While the pictures looks to have come from a machine, they are actually handmade, as if he wants to hide the record of his hand. Carrying the techniques of the mundanely commercial into the world of high culture, combining banal subject matter with formidable technique, he pioneered an indelibly memorable yet personal style. For most of the world, Lichtenstein was born at the Leo Castelli Gallery in February-March 1962. His show sold out before it opened. Indeed, Masterpiece, painted later that year, is widely seen as an ironic take on his own success. Wearing a black polo neck sweater, the artist, in the painting, Brad, looks on while his muse gushes. "Why, Brad, darling, this painting is a masterpiece. Soon you'll have all of New York clamouring for your work." Lichtenstein is most famous for his comic strip images, and those include Drowning Girl. Quote, "I don't care, I'd rather sink than call Brad for help," declares the foundering heroine, her tears spilling into the salty waves that surround her as a single manicured hand rises up like a last dramatic plea to be saved. Wham! Derived from a war comic in which a fighter jet shoots down an enemy aircraft in a cartoonish explosion of yellow and red flame. Such images have become iconic, grabbing the attention as forcefully as the advertising posters and product images, or the newspaper comic strips or mail-order catalogues from which they are derived. His works stamp themselves onto the mind. Lichtenstein's pop images caused a sensation and controversy. They were regarded as an affront to perceptive sensibilities. They were seen as attracting the wrong cultural sort. Life magazine, echoing an earlier feature which mooted Jackson Pollock as the greatest artist in the United States, ran an article about Lichtenstein posing the question, is he the worst artist in the US? But despite this, or perhaps even because of this, his works had huge commercial success. While his comic book period only spanned a handful of years throughout his career, he borrowed images from great artists to create witty and coded visual puns. Both Haystacks and Ruined Cathedral, dated 1969, are his dotty reworkings of Monet, while his Still Life with Goldfish series is a hymn to Matisse. But perhaps the most enduring artistic influence of his life was Picasso. Lichtenstein's Frolic is an entertaining meditation on the Spanish master's beaver with beach ball, while his femme d'Alger is his take on Picasso's work of the same name from 1955, sometimes as an artist's studio look Mickey. Inspired by Matisse's depiction of his own studio, Lichtenstein sneaks in a version of one of his own paintings. When Lichtenstein died in 1997, it was the end of a career spanning half a century in which he'd created nearly 5,000 works. His legacy is found everywhere. Art that is audacious, that is quick-witted, that is cool and ironic and dry, but also thoroughly accessible, enjoyable by the connoisseur and the complete novice. His paintings have sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, and he has influenced a host of artists, including Damien Hirst. Most people know Lichtenstein for his oversized cartoon paintings like his Sobbing Blondes and Wham. He's often called the architect of pop art, and we still see his images everywhere, in adverts for skincare products or sportswear, or even on Valentine cards. We know when designers are doing a Lichtenstein. His style is so bold, so widely reproduced, it's immediately recognisable. His images changed the art world forever, but Lichtenstein wasn't all comic strip thrills. And Roy Lichtenstein is surely a history maker.